It's really important for entrepreneurs to really understand that they don't know everything. You can't possibly know everything. But if you have the right team around you advising you and you trust them, it can really help to grow the business much, much faster.
Hey, Naomi, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Hi, Samuel. Thank you for having me.
Most certainly, most certainly. Well, I appreciate you sparing this time and sharing some of your life lessons and wisdom. For the audience that may not have heard of you before, can you share with our audience where you get your accent and also kind of your career path you took to get to where you are today?
Absolutely, yes. So my parents are both British, so I'm half British. I moved to the United States in 2006, so I am now half British and half American. And I have spent all of my career working with boards of directors and working with individuals who are looking to gain board seats. And so I'm very passionate about preparing and positioning the next generation of board members, and also preparing and positioning the next generation of entrepreneurs who are looking for boards as well, for board members to advise their boards.
Makes sense. Yeah, and you spent your entire career in the corporate world helping organizations, and you have advised a lot of entrepreneurs over the years. So clearly, board being training people to become board members, or the importance of having a board for your organization is an important part of what you do. And obviously the people that are listening to us today may or may not even fully understand what a board is or why it's even important. So can you kind of define what a board is?
Yeah, so boards really depend on what stage you're at in your company's history, in your company's life cycle. So for a lot of early stage companies, you'll be looking at advisory boards, which are usually made up of maybe 2, 3, 4 plus people who will be strategic and influential. They may have relationships, and they're there to help advise you on setting up your business and growing your business at the very early stage. Later on, when you start to mature, you might decide, and some of the investors that come and work with you and invest in your business may decide that it's time for you to actually have a board of directors, which is a lot more of a formal group who have fiduciary responsibilities. And their responsibility is really to oversee the stakeholders, if you have shareholders, and to make sure that the business runs smoothly, right, and is profitable. Mm-hmm. So there are different types of boards. And then, of course, you have advisory boards that you can set up for medium to large size businesses too. So one example might be, for example, DocuSign has different types of advisory boards that help them advise them on different areas of the business, and they also have a board of directors. Mm-hmm. So when people come to me and they say, hey, I want to build a board, or they say, hey, I'd like to be on a board, my next question is always to dig deeper into what kind of board are you looking to join? What's your goal? What are you looking to achieve in the next few years? And then we look at, what are the types of people, experiences, skill sets, and even character types, right, that you're looking for. For a lot of entrepreneurs, they're in sort of very early stage, scrappy. They're trying to make things work with what they have, and they need people around them that understand that world. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that have been through a sale of their business, especially on the smaller side. I've seen them join a lot of these advisory boards at the very early stage. And then there are people, again, they're a little bit more mature in their phase. So they may be opening up new markets. They may be going into different regions. They may be going into different areas of the globe, right? So they may even look for advisory boards or boards of directors who represent those regions or those markets.
Mm-hmm. So basically, from my understanding of what you described, so there's the advisory board and then the board of directors. So they're kind of two distinct type of board.
That's
that you
right.
Can have in your, okay.
That's right. So the advisory board is, if you want to think about it like this, the easiest way to think about it is an advisory board advises the CEO. Okay, you work for the CEO and you are there to, on the end of a phone call or in a board, in a meeting, perhaps it could be together with the rest of the board, or it might just be you on your own. But you're there really to advise them on anything, whatever your expertise is in, the strategy of the business, like I said, moving into different markets or building relationships. That's what they will call, the CEO generally will call on you for that. And then for the board of directors, it's a much, much more formal group that are essentially working for stakeholders, which are employees, clients, and shareholders. So they don't actually work for the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their responsibilities, and we won't have time to go through everything here on the call today,
Mm-hmm.
but for those who are wondering, it's very worth a quick Google search on roles and responsibilities of board directors. Really, their
Mm-hmm.
fiduciary responsibilities range from, being able to fire the CEO and hire new ones, right? Succession planning. They're also responsible for confirming the financial performance of the business and the financial statements, working with auditors, and really providing that strategic guidance that is impartial. A lot more responsibility if you're a board of directors, and a lot more work, essentially, potentially too, if you're an entrepreneur. And then on the advisory board side, it's really an advisor group that can help you through whatever business challenge you're facing.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, from what you're describing is an important, go-to team, right? That you can actually go with any of the problems that you have as a CEO, trying to figure out, what to do to get to the next level of your company. Or in a much bigger organization, it's almost like a requirement, right? If you're especially a public company, you need to have board of directors. And I believe if you are also raising capital and taking money from venture firms, right, then you actually need to have a board, which is almost a requirement. But mostly privately held, smaller organizations don't ever think about having a board. They're kind of the boss, right? And they don't want to have to report to anybody or be accountable to anybody. So do you advise those privately held companies the importance of having a board?
Yes, we do. And well, my role and what I feel my responsibility is for entrepreneurs to work closely with them side by side, not only to uncover if an advisory board or a board of directors is right for them, but also thinking through who are the individuals that will be the best fit to work with them at that time. And these people might come in and out of your, advisor community or advisor network. But I really look to kind of understand what are the goals of the business, what are you looking to achieve, and then who is already an advisor to you, right? We don't want to double up on skill sets. We don't want to have a group of people who all know the same people and all have the same skills. And also, it needs to be complementary. So, in many cases, I've seen entrepreneurs who have a strong technical or product background tend
Mm-hmm.
to partner very well with people who have a sales mindset or who understand the customer very well. And they kind of partner with those entrepreneurs and can actually work very, very well side by side because they bring complementary skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition to that, it's really important for entrepreneurs to really understand that they don't know everything. You can't possibly know everything. But if you have the right team around you advising you and you trust them, it can really help to grow the business much, much faster. So there was one particular company that I worked with, and they were making a baby formula product. And
Mm-hmm.
during COVID, this exploded, because there were shortages. And they had an advisory board. Now they're thinking about moving and getting into a board, getting a board of directors. And it's really important to understand there's a team that have helped me get to where I am today. But now that the company has gone through extreme amounts of growth, who do we now need and what is the future of the business? So your requirements and your opportunities change and shift. So it's important to think that board should be that way too. Another big one is independent people, but who are trustworthy. And it's very, very difficult to find. You can get people who are just looking for a title or some pay, and they're looking to advise you in your company. You really have to single out the individuals that actually really want to help you and really are passionate about what you do. And that comes with time. I don't think that comes with just a couple of interviews or a couple of calls, but really understanding who is out there that wants to be part and wants to play a part in your journey. So really looking to find those individuals too. And then referrals are a great one, right? Somebody who is a reference, somebody that someone has worked with before, that can work very well to kind of get that trust level as well. So, from all different angles, we try and look at the holistic organization about what it needs, what it requires, what's the personality of the CEO, and what will be a good fit for them. Are they open to advice, right? And really understanding what types of characters would be best suited. And more recently, there's been more and more conversations around having coaching skills as a board director or an advisor. So rather than, walking into a meeting with a CEO or an entrepreneur and, firing out orders, telling them what to do, and then getting frustrated when these things don't happen, actually taking more of a coaching approach where you ask questions to try and get to the answer. And you may not know what that answer is, right? The entrepreneur knows, but really working with them and then coming to a solution together. So really finding the right fit, the personality, the characteristics, the skills and everything. It sounds pretty complex, and it is complex. And finding the right team that all work together, that don't necessarily all agree all the time, which is important, but actually can cooperate and can work toward an agreement or a solution that benefits the company, the entrepreneur, the employees, stakeholders, and anyone who is a shareholder as well.
Yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions too. I mean, I think you brought up a good point, like entrepreneurs, especially if the CEO is not, like you have to acknowledge that you don't know it all. And I think you need to come to believe that, or at least understand that. It's a sense of humility. It doesn't necessarily mean like you're just saying I'm incompetent. It's just like recognizing your weakness and being able to fill that void with somebody else who might have the strengths. But the other point that I had is how is having a board, with all the different qualifications that you mentioned, to help you grow the company to the next level. How is that any different from hiring a consulting firm that might have a certain level of expertise in a certain field, whether it be expanding into a market or sales or marketing, whatever those things are? How is that any different from an advisory board that helps you accomplish very similar goals?
Well, for one, it could be cost. So for a lot of early stage companies, they just don't have the cash or the resources to pay for consultants, especially some of the bigger consultants. So that's often a barrier to entry for them going to consultants. Advisory boards and how they are compensated can range from anything from a 0.5% equity or a 1% equity share for each person, no pay, but equity share for the start. And if things grow and things become more serious and you're working well together, there's an expectation that there will be an agreement made, and there may be some, I don't know, a cash award for every meeting or every month that you work. So a little bit more like a consultant. But generally it can start with just a very small equity share. And so they have some skin in the game. They feel excited about it. And then at any point, if both of those people decide that they don't want to work together, then they don't need to work together. A consultant, as we all know, will require retainers and different types of fees and can be pretty hefty costs. So now, what I have seen is a lot of early stage companies hiring consultants onto their board. So they kind of get the best of both worlds. Of course, that consultant is not going to be working at the same rate as they would if they were doing I don't know, 20 hours a week or something like that. And nothing like that. That's a consultant. An advisory board member would be on the end of a phone call, maybe an hour a week, if that, right? So it really depends. I think it's a very, there's a long scale, it's a wide scale of what this looks like. So I can't tell you it's one or the other. But I would say the biggest one is definitely that costs are an issue for a lot of these early stage businesses. Now, consultants also will do some of the work. So they will projects together. They might put together recommendations and actually go and do, for example, a whole rebrand of a company. An advisor or a board member are unlikely to go that far. They would do the recommending and then they would pass it off to somebody else. Now, that often works very well for businesses because let's say you're the founder and you have, I don't know, 50 employees, 200 employees, whatever the number is, or 5 employees, it doesn't matter. You may have somebody in the business who can execute on these things. You just need somebody who's a big picture thinker, who can think strategically and to help guide the project or guide the future of the business or or pick up the phone, right, and make a call, but they don't need to sit in the sales pitch. So, so I think entrepreneurs like that because they get the best of both worlds. They get the advice and then they can go run with it themselves, rather than having a consultant sort of part doing some of the work and also working in, essentially doing work in their business on a daily basis. So there's a lot of differences. Yeah.
And as far as the board of directors, is the same compensation structure for them as well? Some sort of an equity plus maybe some sort of a cash award?
Yeah, I think and let's just stick to private companies for the sake of it today, because public company board members are compensated a little differently. But for some of the entrepreneurs who are out there and you're thinking of getting a board of directors together, if it's a formal board of directors, there should be a compensation. I've seen annual compensation of anything from $10,000 per person for the whole year, all the way to, $70,000, $100,000, depending on the size of the business. And you have KPIs for these board members, right? Okay. So they have to attend a certain number of meetings. They have to contribute to whatever it might be. They get assessed every year. So you can vote them in, you can vote them out. So you can have rules. And again, I'm sure I'm speaking to a lot of people here on your show, Coffee with Closers, who are, entrepreneurs and who are private companies. So again, private companies, you can sort of write your own governance rules and for your own business. So you can make it work for you.
Makes sense. So obviously, we talked a lot about the importance of having a board for the organization as a whole, right? I think that's from all the things that you outlined, it's a no-brainer why you should consider having a board. But what about the entrepreneur who might have the qualities, right? Like you said, they either exited a company or they've built multiple organizations. They have expertise in certain areas, right? Maybe it could be cybersecurity and security, those sort of topics, or it could be sales or marketing, or something about acquisition and mergers and acquisitions, or finance. All of those areas, right? People have expertise in. Why should someone actually dedicate their time and try to go invest into somebody else's company and become a board member? Why? What's the reason?
Yeah, so I'm sure, again, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it can be a little lonely at the top, right? And for a lot of people that I've spoken to who are entrepreneurs, and not necessarily in the early stage of their business, because I feel like that's, it's 100% of their time is focused on building the business. So I wouldn't necessarily be running out. As soon as I started a business, I wouldn't be running out to go and serve on other people's boards. But certainly after a while, like you said, they can contribute and they can give back, and they've been through a lot of the same challenges that others are going through. And so they feel like it's a good time. There's a huge benefit if you're a lonely entrepreneur to go and serve on boards, because you hear and understand what other companies are going through. You can sit next to people who might be potential customers of yours. They might be potential individuals to give you advice on your company. So it's great networking, and you really get to hear different perspectives of things. I mean, I know from when I sit on a board and people are asking questions, and like you said, you might be sitting next to a cybersecurity expert, or you might be sitting next to a partner at a law firm or an accounting firm, and you listen to the questions they're asking, and you're thinking, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they're asking that, or I see why they're asking those questions. And so you start to it helps you to understand your own business and ask questions of yourself. So in terms of your personal development, I think it's absolutely essential for people who are in business to serve on other boards. And then in addition to that, the network, right? Building that network. And then I think the third piece is also really to keep your sort of finger on the pulse of what's going on, because again, as I said, it can be lonely at the top. It's not just loneliness, it's actually that you're so focused on what you're doing, and you can sometimes forget what else is going on around you. And sure, you go to conferences and you speak at these events, but frequently they're all in your industry, right? They're your own businesses, they're your own industries, you're very familiar with them. But interesting to go and sit on the board of a company that is not in your industry, and possibly, which obviously makes sense. You don't want to be a conflict of interest sitting on a competitor's board, right? But it's interesting to kind of think, what are they worried about? And should I be worried about that? I've heard from many, many of my own clients who have said, I'm not in the business of, I didn't think we had a cybersecurity issue, but I've been going to my board meetings and it seems to be, an issue that they're discussing. So I brought it back to my board. So really bringing it back to your company and saying, hey, these people are worrying about this topic. Should we be? So keeping you abreast of everything that's going on. And then the final piece, which is kind of twofold of what we've been talking about, is as an entrepreneur, a CEO, founder, CIO, whichever role you're in, you're likely to be managing your own board and likely to be managing, or if in the future, you will be managing your own board. So what a better way than to learn, right? To actually be on a board and to understand what it's like to be on the other side of the table. When I say the other side of the table, I mean when you're like an advisor. And so from a lot of our clients that we work with, I've heard that they say, I've actually become a better chair, right? The chair of my board. I'm actually better at chairing my board now that I've become a board member and I know what it's like and I understand the questions that they're going to be asking. And so in some cases, they can kind of predict where the board is going to go with a particular topic or area of change that might need to take place. So I would say those are the things that you need to consider. And then, of course, you have, I'm focusing a little bit here on kind of corporate, for-profit businesses. But, there's also the nonprofit board roles too, which are extremely important. It's great for you to have visibility in the community, especially if you're a business that has ties to the community or employs in the community. It's great for relationship building. And it's also important to give back, right? I think most people have served at some point on a nonprofit board. And so really important to just be visible in the community and to be able to do great work and help others.
So what are the practical steps an entrepreneur can take to become a board member? Kind of like you described, they're kind of well past the startup stage. They are established. They have some experience under their belt, and they now feel like they can contribute to the community and also to the other entrepreneurs out there. So what could they do to actually go, begin the process of becoming a board member?
Yeah, so it's a pretty easy process. I would say the first step is really to understand what kind of board you want to join. So we've mentioned sort of corporate boards, we've mentioned nonprofits. There's also advisory boards. We've talked about boards of directors. The first step is really to understand what is the best fit for you and why, and for your future, right, as a sort of strategic move. So let's say you decide you're an entrepreneur in a business and you decide that serving on the nonprofit of a local organization is important to you. The people on the board are important and they're people you want to be getting to know a little bit better. The cause is absolutely in line with your own personal beliefs and values and the corporation's values. So it all kind of fits. The next step is to say, okay, those are the kinds of companies I want to join. The next step is then to really think through, what do I bring to that board? And to start to write out and to verbalize what you would do on that board. So again, if I'm face to face with a nonprofit board that is local, I have my pitch. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm going to bring. I'm a local business. I want to bring visibility to your cause. We also do an annual giving, right? We have annual giving and annual sponsorships, and we would like you to be part of that. In return, I would like to be on your board, and this is what I can help you with. I have relationships here, here, and here, right? So, and I would like to maybe get my employees to volunteer once a year. So, it could be all part of a mission that you have, and that's going to be your pitch as to what you bring. And then once you've sort of decided on that is your narrative and what you want to say, the next step is really to start looking, okay, where are these boards? Who are they? Can I identify anyone I know? LinkedIn is a great tool to use to just see the second degree associations or the first degree connections or whatever there may be. And then really start to plan that out. Who do I need to speak to in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks? That will kind of get me a step closer to where I need to be. Now, for some of the corporate boards, and for those of you who are a little bit more mature in your careers and maybe are thinking about some of the bigger boards, I would strongly recommend creating a board bio or a kind of one-page board profile on who you are and what you do on boards. It's critically important, especially in, for some of the very competitive board seats. You will need to have a more professional bio. Have a look at your LinkedIn, right? Is it also, does it speak about your board experience? Does it use board language? And again, we'll probably have to do a whole other session about what is board language, but it's sort of like the terminology that they use at the board level that is very, very different from the terminology you would use as an executive in a company. So really that's it. And then action, right? I mean, it's like anything. When you have a goal, you set out your plan, you execute the plan, and off you go. So really it's planning, and it's making sure that you know where you're going and what you're going to say when you get there.
And I know when you and I had a prior conversation, you mentioned how some boards have failed their employees and their investors, and then some boards have actually helped. Can you share maybe one or two stories of such examples of how a board may have helped their stakeholders and how maybe where it didn't really work to protect anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of case studies of boards that have been successful in turning companies around. And I think you've just got to look at some of the most successful businesses out there and some of the businesses that have the largest market cap. So, Microsoft would be one. You've got Apple, you've got, Walmart, all of these really big companies. And check out their boards, have a look at who has served on their boards. I mean, generally those companies are going to have some of the most impressive former, Fortune 1000 C-suite people that exist. So it's understandable that they would be getting, because they're the largest companies, that they would get the best talent. But they weren't always that way, right? Walmart wasn't always the largest business. It's grown to be that, and it has maintained that. So, and the same thing for the others I mentioned. Apple's famous, right, for the board actually got rid of Steve Jobs. And then, they made a decision, but they also made the decision to bring him back. And so you could say that they made a mistake, but then they also corrected their mistake. And everyone makes mistakes. You can decide that somebody isn't right for a business and get rid of them. There are plenty of CEOs that are pushed out. And then you have others, and if I'm dating myself, as WorldCom from the late 90s. So if anyone has not heard of this case study, you only need to Google it for five split seconds, right? And you'll find out all about WorldCom. But, WorldCom was a situation where, the finances of the business were not being managed correctly, and they were being managed. It was essentially fraud was happening within the business, and the CFO and their financial team were trying to hide this from the board, and they succeeded in hiding it from the board. So the board should be aware of everything that is going on, and should be very much in line with how the business is progressing. And if there are any issues, they should be notified of it. But WorldCom is a great example. But there are businesses that go under and go bankrupt all the time as a result of mismanagement and the wrong type of oversight. So boards are absolutely important to businesses, and I'm sure companies that we're at, we know who the boards are, or we are familiar with the names of the people on our board. It's really important to know who is on the the board before you join a company too, right? To really understand what kind of leadership and who they have chosen to be their leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are some good stories. And I don't know if the recent changes at Twitter, I think he did fire some of the board members too, I think as part of the process, which obviously is a public company now became a private company. So I think he's got more voting rights and he can do things to change that, the company culture a bit.
Yeah, there's so many unique situations where companies either we've also seen companies where the board will actually get rid of the CEO and then they'll put one of the board members as the sort of interim CEO to kind of make
Mm-hmm.
sure things continue to operate smoothly because they know the business very well. So yeah, there's something called board dynamics, which is basically a polite and very professional term for saying, all the stuff that goes on in the board where people are disagreeing or fighting, or there's some turbulence essentially going on between the individuals on the board. So board dynamics is something that we study and that we talk about a lot. You prefer not to have too many board dynamics that are negative, but people are people. It's kind of the name of the game, I think.
Most certainly. Well, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about you. So, obviously, you've been in the entrepreneurial advisory space for a very, very long time. Now, you're actually starting to build your own firm, and trying to be more an advisor and building board members and everything on by yourself, and actually training and coaching other entrepreneurs to become board members. So, of all the things that you've done, like, what's your why? What keeps you drive, and what keeps you motivated?
Yeah, so I've always been highly motivated and quite disciplined to I spent about 7 years at boarding school, and during that time I would do a lot of sports, and so
Mm-hmm.
I was frequently up early training or late at night training, and that has kind of continued into my life. I still work out very early every morning, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, not every morning, but most mornings, because I like to find the time to do the exercise, and I'm disciplined enough to make sure it gets done. And I think that also comes through to some of the work that I do with individuals. And I'm very passionate about inspiring people to think about their board career and to build a board career. A lot of people I speak to have either got it on their mind, or they had never really thought about it, or they didn't think they were good enough. And I like to work with individuals to really turn that around and prepare and position them correctly to launch their board careers. And it can be at a very small scale, and it could be at a larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with somebody at the moment who has just gained a board seat at a bank.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just a very dedicated and very driven and disciplined individual too. And he set about a goal of getting a board seat in 2022, and he's achieved it. So I'm very passionate about goal setting, being disciplined, and going after something that you really want, but doing it planned and prepared, right? Being sort of thoughtful about how you do it. And the same thing really goes for a board career. It's not like an executive career. It's a little different, and it needs to be treated differently, and it needs to be you need to appreciate that it has its differences from searching for just a regular job. But essentially, I think it's for me, what really drives me is seeing people succeed, and seeing
Mm-hmm.
people succeed on boards, and then of course seeing companies succeed. I mean, I mentioned the baby formula company. There was also another company. It was a software business, and we helped to build their advisory board, and they have gone on to strength after strength. So it's just great to see these businesses thrive because they have the right advisory group around them, and they have the right support.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you're obviously investing into entrepreneurs and helping them to empower themselves. What are you doing for personal development for yourself?
For myself, so I'm actually completing an executive MBA at the moment, so that will be done in May. I've also completed in the past 2 Ironman races. So what I am planning is once my MBA is over, I do want to go and do a third one. And I said I wouldn't. I said I wouldn't, and that was in 2015. I said I would never do another one. But now I'm sort of getting the itch. So I might be planning for that as well next year. But yeah, I think those are two pretty big goals to achieve. So I'll be focusing on that.
And obviously, decision making is an important part, especially if you're a part of a board. You have to help others make decisions, and as like you said, you're a very driven person. You make a strategy and plans, and actually go and execute it, and waking up early and doing those things. So, is there some sort of a decision making framework that you use to make very strategic decisions?
I think at the board level. So let's think about a board when they make a decision. Frequently, this is sort of the process that it goes through. So the CEO or CFO, whoever, right? But generally the CEO will present a challenge that they're facing, or will say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this particular topic. We don't know if we're going to go left or right? We don't know which way to go, or whatever the question is. As a board, collaboration is absolutely essential. So it's not about me standing up and saying, well, you should go and do this. It's about bringing everybody together, getting the best out of everyone, and really using their expertise to come to the solution. And as I said before, that coaching style of not, well, you should go left, or, oh, no, well, I don't agree, you should go right. More of the questioning and making sure that we have all the information that is needed to make the decision, and also asking the right questions so that the CEO can start to talk through the problem. They'll probably have the solution themselves, but working as a group to kind of get to that to that end goal. And then, of course, board members aren't just about asking questions, although that's a major piece. They're then there to say, okay, so why don't we explore going left? I know somebody that we can speak to. Or if we explore going left, let me tell you about how it worked for me. I did the same thing. And these are the things we should look out for and be aware of. But really supporting the business through that decision. And maybe it's not your first choice, but maybe it's the right decision for that company. And so really, when it comes to decisions about a company's future and an entrepreneur's decisions that they need to make, they'll come to the board. But it's really, really important that you have the best interests of the company in mind, that it's not about gaining something or winning an argument or anything like that. It should be about collaboration, and it should be about coming together to do what is right for the business, right? And right for the, like I said, the shareholders, the stakeholders, and the people around them.
Makes sense. And like you said, you're a very disciplined person. You actually, wake up early, do exercise, do all of those things. I'm wondering if you also have some sort of a productivity hack in terms of making sure that you get all your priorities straightened, and that you get those whatever you plan to do executed.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in coaching. So executive coaching, I'm a big fan of it. A company that I led here in the United States was actually a coaching business. So I got to know the coaching industry very, very well. And executive coaching is absolutely essential for, I think, any entrepreneur or anybody who is planning their life, right? And who has a plan and wants to have a plan that brings them to some sort of goal or success. And so I've actually worked with coaches quite a lot on different goal setting. And there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. But one particular way is you have to sort of look at your life as it's almost like an octagon, right? And in each of the 8 areas of the octagon, you have things like family, you have the next one might be money, the next one might be investments, the next one might be your children, or your direct family, or your other extended family. It could be career, it could be health and well-being, and you have to look at, I can't remember what the other 2 are, but you look at these 8 things, and you need to determine out of 10 how important it is. And never will they all be a 10, right? You can never have everything as a 10, because you have to kind of balance it out. But you have to look at that, I think, on a regular basis and say, what is important to me right now? And so what are my goals? So I just mentioned, about obviously doing my education. That's very important to me right now. Once that's finished, I'm hoping I already am, but using what I've learned to improve and help others and build other businesses. But essentially you have to think, okay, so education might take a backseat because I've done that part. Now I might be health and well-being, right? And getting back into challenging myself and doing some competitions. So, and then at other times you might think, no, family is really important. I have a sick parent, or I have a child who I don't go to their soccer practice as much as I would like. So you have to shift. So I think really shifting your priorities, working with a coach on these types of things, but definitely thinking through, what are my priorities? What do I need to focus on today? And what do I need to focus on next week? And just taking every day as it comes, right? You can make big plans for the future, but I believe every small thing that you do every day contributes to what happens in your future. It's not like you do one thing and your future changes, right? It's all the small things that happen that help you to get to where you want to be.
Most certainly. Well, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think we all need to push ourselves a little bit more. I think I do push myself, but I know there have been situations where I could have pushed myself a little bit more. So I would say really reach for the skies. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, they need the motivation. They need to think big, but they also need to be realistic in what they're doing. But definitely really sort of push yourself to get yourself to a higher level. Put yourself into situations where you might feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think that's okay. I think that's good. So again, you might be thinking, I'd love to start my own business. You might be watching this podcast and thinking through, I have this business idea. Should I do it or shouldn't I? And you'll only regret not doing it. You won't regret doing it, even if it doesn't end up the way you want it to. So certainly really being, giving yourself big enough goals, being confident enough to get out there and do them. And like I said, having the right team around you is so important. You're only as good as the people around you, I believe. And whether that's your friends, your family, whether that's your, also your board, or the individuals that are advising you, your team members, the people you hire, all of that will have an impact on you, your decision-making, and your business. So critically important. And I know there's a few things there, but just really people around you, goals, and really making sure you're pushing yourself all the time.
Awesome. Well, Naomi, I certainly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Samuel. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.